Hi everyone, this lesson's on the immune system. So when we're learning the immune system, I want us to think, well, what is actually causing someone to get sick? Why does your body suddenly become so imbalanced? And how does the body respond to this? How does the body respond to being sick? What are the things happening inside you when you're dealing with some kind of an infection or illness? And I want us to go even further than this. When someone is sick, why? Why is some kind of an organism attacking the body? And when the body responds, why is it responding this way? There is a reason behind everything that occurs. So looking at a generic organism like the one you can see on the left, if you're going to be invaded by a virus or a bacteria, there are some points of entry that are pretty general and applied to almost every animal. The digestive system provides an opening to the outside world that organisms could get in. Same thing with your respiratory system. Since in both of these tubes you're constantly exchanging material with the outside world, this is a point of entry for an invader. The urogenital tract is an opening that can be invaded as well, and any breakage in your skin. The route of attack for these invaders is going to be taking advantage of the highways that are already in your body. The circulatory system, since that moves blood around to every cell in your body, invaders can use that to move around as well. That is also true for your lymphatic system. Your lymph is the system of fluids that is involved in your immune response. So why do we have an immune system? Well, your body is constantly under attack from the outside. We have to protect ourselves against pathogens, organisms that want to make us their lunch or use us to reproduce. Things like viruses such as HIV or the flu or measles, bacteria like pneumonia or Lyme disease, fungi too can infect us, particularly yeast, causing things like athlete's foot. Protist single-celled eukaryotes like amoebas and malaria can infect us, and we can also be attacked from the inside. Cells such as cancer can grow abnormally, posing a threat to the organism. There are two types of immunity we want to be concerned with. The first type is called your innate immunity. This is your first line of defense from an attack. This occurs before any pathogen makes its way into your body. These are non-specific things like your skin and mucus that attack anything and everything that try to enter. Your real immune system is called your acquired or adaptive immune response. This develops after a pathogen has made its way into your body, and since it's made its way in, your body has a dilemma. How do I attack just the invader and not my own cells? So this is often also called the specific immune response because your immune system is going to need to attack one specific structure. You have three primary lines of defense. Your first line of defense are non-specific barriers. Like I mentioned before, you have broad external defenses. I want you to think of them like walls and moats. These are things like your skin and mucous membranes. They're there to just keep everything out. They're not specific. Just beneath that layer, just beneath the skin and the mucus, there are non-specific patrolling units. These are broad and will destroy anything that they know isn't you. Think of them as patrolling soldiers behind the wall. These are our phagocytic white blood cells. Phagocytic just means cells that eat other objects. Should an invader get past your first line and makes it through the wall, it sneaks past the patrol, then your last line of defense is what we call the true immune system. This is a specific, targeted, acquired immunity. This is the SEAL Team 6 of your immune system. These are elite trained units that know exactly what to look for and will attack only that structure. These are your antibodies and your more specific white blood cells, which we call lymphocytes. So to look at your first line of defense in a little more detail. Your non-specific external defenses, you have barriers like your skin. You also have traps to capture anything coming your way. Your mucous membrane, you have cilia, little hairs on a lining of your lungs, and in your digestive tract that can kick particles and invaders out. Your hair is also a great way to trap invaders, and your earwax. You also have various methods of elimination. Coughing, sneezing, urinating, and, of course, diarrhea are all ways that you can propel invaders out of you. You also have different pHs at different regions of your body. Your body has areas that make unfavorable pH. Things like stomach acid, sweat, saliva, and urine are all inhospitable to the microbes that are trying to invade you. For example, your tears have an enzyme called lysozyme, and a lysozyme is able to digest the bacterial cell walls for anything that's invading you. So if you think you might be getting infected, Those tears that you're crying might actually help you get better. Your second line are some non-specific patrolling cells. These are constantly going around in your body fluids and will eat anything that isn't you. They're ready to attack, but they don't remember anything from those attacks, so they're really only helpful in the short term. These are commonly referred to collectively as leukocytes, but these are your phagocytic cells. These are white blood cells that are able to eat other organisms. The most common ones are macrophages, neutrophils, and natural killer cells. You also have a system called the complement system, which is proteins circulating around that will destroy anything in sight. And they're involved in a reaction called the inflammatory response that I'll show you in a moment. To look at these cells more specifically, your phagocytic white blood cells, the most common white blood cell is something called a neutrophil. Neutrophils make up about 70% of the white blood cells in your body. Now, they're very short-lived. They only live for about 3 days, and they can gobble up about 10 to 20 invaders. They'll gobble them up through phagocytosis and self-destruct as an end result. Why do they self-destruct? Well, this is going to protect you from any of the bits inside that white blood cell from infecting you again. When you go to that mirror and you pop your pimples, it is these neutrophils that you are blasting onto your mirror. So next time you do that, thank those white blood cells for their sacrifice. Another type of white blood cell is a macrophage. Macrophages are big eaters. These ones live for a while, and they can eat upwards to 100 different invaders. So these are the big bad patrolling cells. And then there are natural killer cells. Natural killer cells have the ability to destroy your body's own cells, but will only do so if that cell is infected with a virus or has become cancerous. Let me show you how. A natural killer T cell is going to be able to perforate a cancer cell. It does this by going up to the cell, popping holes in the cell membrane, and dropping in lysosomes and other enzymes so that that cell ultimately ruptures or lyses. This is typically only used if apoptosis, natural cell death, isn't occurring for a cell that's gone awry. The complement system, as I mentioned before, these are 20 proteins circulating around in your blood and plasma. They're very effective against bacterial and fungal cells. They're non-specific. It's just if they attach to anything, they can help stimulate that cell to undergo apoptosis. So let's combine all of these non-specific responses into something called the inflammatory response. Imagine your skin is punctured with something like a splinter, and that splinter had some bacteria on it. If that occurs, you have cells in your skin called mast cells. These mast cells, if they detect an invader, will immediately be triggered to release paracrine molecules known as histamines. Histamines will cause blood vessels to open and stimulate white blood cells to swim nearby. Why do this? Well, notice in the diagram how the blood vessel is closed, it's sealed shut. Those neutrophils inside the blood that could help with the infection can't reach it. They need something to help them get through. So as those histamines work, the blood vessels become leaky, the area becomes swollen and red. You've likely experienced this with an injury on yourself. That happens because all those fluids from the blood are now going to be able to carry neutrophils and other white blood cells to the site of injury to gobble up all of those invaders. As that happens, these neutrophils and macrophages will gobble it up and they'll self-destruct and they'll die in the process, leaving behind a little bit of cellular debris and leaving behind some pus. But once the infection's cleared, the body will then respond by healing. Notice the crack on the top of the skin. Hopefully you remember from the cell cycle lecture that anchorage dependence and density dependent inhibition is going to be what helps that skin regrow and heal to be as good as new. The big thing with the inflammatory response to take away from this is a non-specific pathway. None of the white blood cells were programmed or were taught how and what to attack. The inflammatory response is also often greeted with a fever. This is when the local response isn't enough and it's a wide response to your entire system. The whole point of a fever is by raising your temperature, you're inhibiting bacterial growth, you're stimulating your phagocytes to go and destroy the infection, and it also speeds up the repair of your tissues. Another fun fact about fevers is it causes your liver and spleen to store iron. Iron that's normally in your blood can actually be gobbled up by invaders such as bacteria. So it's a way of starving those bacterial invaders. Now let's get to your true immune system, the third line of offense, your acquired or active immunity. This is a specific type of defense that comes with memory. It's going to remember what it's attacked. The lymphocytes in this case are known as B cells, T cells, and we're going to use structures such as antibodies to respond to specific invaders. So how is your immune system able to recognize an invader? Well, it's going to look at something called an antigen. Antigens, think of them as cellular name tags. You have antigens on the outside of your cells that recognize self. It's a way of telling your immune system, hey, this is you, don't attack me. They're typically made of glycoproteins and glycolipids. These self-antigens don't trigger a response from white blood cells. Your foreign invaders, things like bacteria and virus that can enter you, though, have their own antigens, and these antigens are different than yours. They are foreign. So these are able to trigger a response from your white blood cells. A white blood cell that detects a foreign antigen knows it's not you and is then activated to go and attack. There are the two big classes of white blood cells we want to know are B cells and T cells. So here's a little information about each. B cells mature in the bone marrow in your body. That's why they're called B cells. T cells, on the other hand, mature in the thymus. That's why they're called T cells. B cells often circulate in body fluids. Fun bit of medical history, body fluids used to be called the humors. One of the founding people of medicine thought the body was made of 4 humors or fluids, and that's how you would cure illness. So that's just some history that's stuck around in our naming. T cells, though, on the other hand, are not freely circulating around. They need to be activated to go out and destroy an invader or a cancer cell. B cells can produce antibodies. T cells, on the other hand, don't make antibodies. Instead, they're the one kind of cell that has permission to destroy your body's own cells. B cells are found in what we call the humoral immune response, and T cells are found in what's called the cell-mediated immune response. A little bit more information about B cells. These are the ones that are circulating around in your blood and your lymph, your body's humors. There are 2 varieties we want to keep in mind. One variety is the plasma B cell. Plasma B cells are able to produce antibodies, and I'll show you in a moment how those work. Another type of B cell is a memory B cell. These are cells where after they've encountered an antigen, they will stay in your body and remember it. This is how you acquire immunity that can stay with you during your life. Now, antibodies, these are proteins that can bind to a specific antigen. A reminder that foreign invaders have foreign antigens that we need to detect and attach to in order to destroy them. Antibodies are these Y-shaped structures, and they are unique and specific. In this class, again and again, structure determines function. The structure of an antibody has to match the structure of the foreign antigen if the two are going to be able to interact. This is how your B cells are able to attack only your invader and nothing else. Antibodies can slow down or destroy pathogens in a variety of ways. One way is to neutralize them. A series of antibodies can completely surround a bacteria or a virus and slow it down. Another way is to clump them together. If a macrophage is moving around eating bacteria and they're spread out, that's going to take a lot more time than if an antibody can clump them together and a macrophage can move right in. It can also help precipitate the invader in solution. You are a giant series of solutions. If the antigen's floating all around in your blood, that makes it harder to catch. But if I can precipitate it down to the bottom of a blood vessel, it's a lot easier for a macrophage to come up and gobble them all. These also can target invaders for macrophages to see them and destroy them. And last but not least, antibodies can trigger apoptosis so that the invader destroys itself. So let's look at how B cells react in your immune system. This process is called the humoral immune response because it occurs in your body's humors. It occurs in the blood. So let's say an invader with foreign antigens has entered your blood. B cells, specifically plasma B cells floating around in your blood, are going to detect it. And they're going to test it. They know the antigen isn't you, but they don't have any antibodies that can attach to it. They've never encountered it before. So these B cells are going to roll around on the outside of the invader and make, through trial and error, different antibodies until they recognize it, until they make an antibody that has the right shape to fit the foreign antigen. Once one of those B cells detects the right antibody, it will then make thousands of clones of itself. Why? This B cell and only this B cell makes the specific antibodies that can attach to the invader. After making thousands of clones, the clone war begins. Those B cells go out and release antibodies into your body's fluid to attach to all of those foreign invaders. Now those foreign invaders are tagged, they can precipitate, they can be clumped, and macrophages now know to move in and gobble them up. After this infection, many of those plasma Bs will survive. They will then mature and become memory B cells. These memory B cells will go to your lymph nodes and remain there just in case you're infected again. Why is this so great to have? Well, if you're infected again, you don't have to go through this whole process of recognition. Your body already has antibodies that can attack the invader. So these memory Bs will just immediately be sent out and you won't even feel sick. Your body destroys it before the numbers get too high to cause sickness. This whole process of the humoral immune response on average takes about 10 to 17 days to complete. Now, this is great if you can find the antigen in your body's fluids, but what happens if the attacker gets past these B cells and makes it inside of one of your cells? Well, you're going to need trained assassins at this point. You're going to need your killer T cells. They have unique abilities that enable them to get to things that make it inside your cell. So, to do this, we need to look at the structures that are outside your cells. One structure that's outside your cell is something called a major histocompatibility protein, or an MHC. MHCs provide a snapshot of the health that's going inside the cell. They're a way for cells to show what's going on in their unique environment. It's like their unique fingerprint. And these unique fingerprints can be picked up by T cells or B cells to determine if everything's okay, if it's a foreign cell, or if it is a self cell. Fun aside about MHC proteins, if you're getting an organ transplant and they say you need to find a donor match, what they mean is that that person's organ has the same or almost identical MHC proteins as you. If they match, your immune system is less likely to attack the foreign organ that's put in your body. If the MHCs don't match, your immune system thinks it's foreign and not you and destroys the organ that's been transplanted. So how does a T cell know if a cell is infected? Because it can't tell just by swimming around, right? Well, if a cell gets infected, what that cell's going to do is digest bits of what's infecting it and carry it on the outside of its surface. It's going to turn it into an MHC protein and display on the outside of itself, hey, I'm infected with this, help me. We call these cells that have taken what's infecting them, barfed it up and rubbed it on their outer cell membranes, antigen-presenting cells, or APCs. APCs are presenting the antigen, the foreign antigen of what's infecting them, on the outside so their immune system can pick it up. Once that happens, T cells then can go find it, receive it, send the alarm, and make sure the cell gets help. In this case, help is being told to do apoptosis and kill yourself, or for a T cell to kill the infected cell. So we want to know some specific T cells before we see it all work in action. Some T cells that are good to know are the helper T cell. Helper T cells are T cells that alert the rest of the immune system. If they detect an APC, they release chemicals to let the rest of the immune system know the cell's infected, we need to do something about it. Killer or cytotoxic T cells are the cells that are able to attack your body's infected cells. If there's an infection going on, the killer T can go in, pop in some perforins, and destroy the cell. And just like with B cells, there are memory T cells. After the battle is won, some of these T cells that now remember what that antigen is will go to your lymph node and remain for a long period of time so they can rapidly clone and attack should you be infected by the same antigen again. So let's look at the T cell response, also known as the cell-mediated immune response. Let's say there's a cell that's infected. It's going to destroy parts of it, put it on the outside, and become an antigen-presenting cell. Antigen-presenting cells can be detected by helper Ts. If a helper T detects it, it'll recognize the antigen, and by the way, this can happen with the macrophage as well. It could be that a macrophage has become an APC. When it's recognized, the helper Ts will clone themselves and send out a signal. These are known as interleukins. It says, hey, these cells are infected, we need help, bring out the killer Ts. Those interleukins will activate the killer T, letting the killer T know, hey, this is the specific antigen you need to find. Anywhere you find it, go and destroy. And the killer Ts will go out and do their thing. Also, just so you know, helper Ts can not only stimulate killer Ts, they can also stimulate B cells. What will be the deciding point here? Generally speaking, if you're dealing with bacteria, something that doesn't go inside a cell, you're going to use B cells because they can throw antibodies at the problem. But if it's a virus, something that's underneath the cell membrane infecting the cell, only killer T cells can destroy those infected cells. So let's review the immune responses. Let's say macrophages become an antigen-presenting cell. If the antigens are free-floating in your blood, you're going to do the humoral response. Humors are the body's fluids. B cells are going to be involved in that process. Now let's say antigens are found only on the outside surface of a cell and not in the fluids. The helper Ts are then going to trigger a cellular response and use T cells. The helper T is the one, again, that's deciding, do I need B cells to kill bacteria or do I need T cells to kill a virus? If I use the B cells, we're going to use plasma B to throw out antibodies, and memory Bs hang out remembering what those antibodies are. If we're going to use the cell-mediated response, memory T cells will remain, and cytotoxic killer T cells will destroy the infected cell. So, oh, what a wonderful day. My immune system taking care of everything. I got to pet Grumpy Cat. I got to eat some shellfish. I got stung by my best friend, the bee. But this happened. Why am I having such a horrible time during my wonderful day? Well, these are allergic reactions. Allergies occur whenever a harmless substance causes an immune response. Things like animal dander, bee stings, pollen. Instead of calling these antigens, we're going to call them allergens. Allergens are normally harmless molecular tags that the body is responding to as if they're harmful. Mold, mildew, cat dander, that's not going to actually kill you, but your body can respond as if it's killing you, and that body's response could be what's potentially deadly. When you're experiencing an allergic reaction, you end up with watery eyes or runny nose, itchy throat, and in the most extreme cases, it can constrict your breathing pathways. If you have allergies, you may have taken a drug like Benadryl. If you read that box, you'll notice it's called an antihistamine. Hopefully you remember histamines from the immune response. The idea is if you block the histamines from sending the signal out, your body doesn't become inflamed. Another weird situation that can happen with the immune system is an autoimmunity. Autoimmunity occurs when your body is not able to tell the difference between self and other. This is when the body confuses your self-antigens as if they are a foreign invader. This causes your immune system to attack itself. It affects about 2% of the U.S. population, and more than 80 diseases are caused by autoimmunity. Things like skin rash, joint pain, arthritis, systematic sinus issues. With the immune system, your body has the miraculous ability to remember. This graph is showing you what typically happens when you're infected. You can see after the initial exposure, your body doesn't quickly detect what's going on, but your body will slowly begin to make antibodies. Notice if I expose you to the same disease again, your body almost immediately makes antibodies and destroys the infection in much less time. We want to understand why and how is this occurring. Because it's the same idea behind vaccines. Active immunity is whenever you get immunity by being exposed to an antigen. Vaccines work the same way as you being exposed to a disease for the second time. A vaccine provides acquired immunity by giving you a dead piece of an antigen or a very weakened one. Since the antigen's weakened, you can't get sick from it, but it's there so your B cells and T cells are able to learn and recognize it. This enables you to have a rapid immune response. With a vaccine, you get to skip that first slow phase that you normally get when you're being sick, and instead your body already having memory Bs and Ts immediately can attack and you don't get the disease. Another form of immunity, instead of being actively exposed to an antigen, is passive immunity. This occurs when you get antibodies from another individual. Often this occurs maternally. Babies that are naturally breastfeeding get their mother's antibodies, and that helps give their immune system a boost. The baby doesn't get exposed to the antigen, but by having the mother's antibodies, if that baby then comes in exposure with an antigen, the mother's antibodies can attack. We also can do this by injection. Right now there are a lot of therapies for COVID-19 utilizing this approach. The idea is there are individuals who have gotten sick and recovered, and their bodies are producing antibodies that can attack the infection. By taking out that person's plasma, you're obtaining their antibodies and injecting them in the people who are sick. That gives them a dose of the specific antibodies that can hopefully help them fight off an infection. This is a time-true way of treating viral infections, especially those that are novel or new, those that we haven't had that much experience with. So we started off looking at what causes someone to be sick, why are you being attacked in the first place, how does the body respond, and why does it respond this way? I know this was a lot of information, but believe it or not, what I taught you is a tiny slice of all the different ways your immune system works. I hope this was insightful in your understanding of how your body fights off infections, and I'll see you next time.